What's going on, y'all? And welcome to another episode of Resilient Kings Podcast.
Whoa. Now you about to start some controversy here.
I am your host, Yaron Brown.
Hold on a minute. This is a Resilient King alert. Resilient King alert. You ain't gonna roll past that.
This is Resilient Kings Podcast coming to you.
Let's go.
Welcome to another episode of Resilient Kings Podcast. I am your host with the most, Yaron Brown, and we have a guest today that is amazing. This is my brother in psychotherapy. He is a father. He is an entrepreneur. He is a businessman. He's a workshop provider. He is a whole bunch of stuff that we haven't even gotten into yet, that we probably won't get into in this podcast. What I want you all to know is this is my brother Nasir. Come on in and welcome to the Resilient Kings Podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Check is in the mail, brother.
Look, that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted. I'm glad I did a great job. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. It's not too many black men in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into therapy?
Brother, thank you for having me, for inviting me on your platform. It's not something I take lightly. So number one is just a very sincere thank you to you for having me on. That's number one. Yeah, you're right. It's not a lot of black men. I know as therapists, I want to say that the stat is, and you may know better than I, that I think out of all the therapists in the U.S., out of 100%, I think 4% are identify as black or African American, and I think the stat is that out of that 4%, 1%, maybe a little above, are black men. So this is a conversation of quote unquote, metaphorically speaking, the 1%. So
yes.
Yeah.
So this is a rarity right here. To get two black men together, not only in one space, but on a podcast is almost unheard of.
Yeah. Facts.
So this is a, I wish I had that, like that little thing they go bam like
well, they might be able to what they say, do it in post.
Yeah,
they might be able to do post.
Yes, in the post edits, absolutely. So yeah. So how did you end up making this move?
The short I'll give the short version and then the expanded version. The short version is doing my own healing work and recognizing I needed to do my own healing work. So first was you ever hear the concept of the wounded healer, like where you have a heart to help or to serve, to help or serve folks. But just because you have that heart to help or serve folks doesn't mean you don't have your own stuff to deal with. So I would say for many years, like that was, without me having that terminology, like that was some, not all, but some of my experience as the quote unquote wounded healer, person that loved people, like big love for people, and love seeing people healed, whole, empowered in their joy, all that good stuff. Like that's, it's genuine. It's never gone away, but I still have my own stuff to deal with. So for me, it was doing my own work. I was in graduate school, to become the beginning of becoming a counselor, becoming a therapist. I remember the class, but I'm in one of the classes and one of my professors, said, hey, if you are, you all speaking to just the group, he said, if you all are going to be counselors or therapists, it may make sense to kind of, get you all your own counseling and therapy. If for nothing else, just to know what it's like to quote unquote be on the other side of the couch, so to speak. And I hear it, but it hit here. My brain heard it and I thought, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like, yeah, I mean, it was like, that's logical and just cool, on to the next. Fast forward maybe a week or two later, still in school, first year graduate school, to become a therapist, the beginning of that journey. And I hear another professor say it like, hey, as first year students, grad students, y'all should consider that. And I hear it and it's like, okay, like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, sure. And, I don't know how many times I had to hear it, it was the third, the fourth, the 100th or whatever. But at a certain point, it was like, you have a kind of an inner conversation.
Yes,
and it was like,
where some confirmation happening.
I think that, the somebody may be trying to tell me something.
Absolutely. That's that confirmation. Yep.
Uh-huh. and that was for me. That was my introduction to formal therapy. In
Gotcha.
terms of me saying, you know what, let me go ahead and see if I can find a therapist and start to tap in on some of my own stuff. So, and at that point, I'm in grad school, so I want to say mid 20s, around that time, mid to late 20s, and yeah, like it was scary, is I guess really the thing. Meaning, I wanted to do it, but there was a part of me that didn't want to do it. There was a part of me that's like, okay, this is probably good. My head thinking, well, logically, this kind of makes sense. But there was another part underneath the logic part of me that was kind of like, if I open up Pandora's box, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to jump out. So that process of being like, okay, well, let me try to find a therapist. Who do I relate with? And who do I feel comfortable with? I feel like I could, share some things and be honest or transparent, and that they could hold it. And that they could hold it. That was its own process. And yeah, that was the hopefully the short version of how it kicked off for me. And then of course, years later, actually, being a licensed therapist.
So let me ask you, who did you find? Because I got my story too. So who did you find as your first therapist?
The first, and I don't remember. I don't remember the guy's name.
So it was a man.
It was a man.
Okay.
Yeah. The
Okay.
first person that I ended up tapping in with was a guy, like middle-aged white guy. From the pieces that I remember, because we're going back, probably a couple decades now, but he did nothing wrong, like warm, inviting, personable, like, but I remember sitting there on the couch and just the thing inside of you that says, I can keep it all the way real with you. I can be fully transparent with you. I can speak on something I may not have spoken on with anyone else but you. That didn't come out. And again, this is no knock on him. It could have been my own readiness or lack thereof. Maybe it was cultural, pieces. So yeah, no knock on him, but I remember, I think maybe we tapped in once or twice. Maybe once or twice, but it wasn't enough where I'm like, oh man, I want to go back. So after that, I said, you know what? Let me look someplace else, and I end up finding a sister, Black female. I'm not sure if she was a psychotherapist or psychologist, and warm, inviting. And when I was actually in session, there was more of me that felt comfortable being transparent. So that was the beginning of actually starting to tap in. And I've had I was gonna say a couple, but one other therapist outside of her that I worked with for a significant period of time as well. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So now your name is very unique. Where are you from?
The name Nasir is actually Arabic in
Yes.
origin. And then my last name Bayan is also Arabic.
Okay.
But in terms of where I'm from, I actually was born and raised in the Midwest, in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
So,
Shout out to Columbus, Ohio.
Shout out to Columbus. Yeah. For all my Ohio folks, go Buckeyes.
There we go.
But yeah, born and raised in the Midwest in Columbus, Ohio. And the basically, some of my family, or a significant part of my family, identifies as Christian. Some of my family identifies as Muslim. So growing up with kind of a dual faith or interfaith, however you want to think of, two faiths, being exposed to two different faith traditions, of course, was instrumental, and it's a part of where the Arabic name of Nasir comes from. So yeah. When I was growing up, sometimes with a name like Nasir, sometimes when I was growing up, people would say, where are you from? And I'd be like, Columbus. They'd be like, but no, where are you from? And I'm like, Columbus, Ohio. They're like, but no, where are you really from? I'm like, such and such street on Columbus. And I'm like, because they were trying to square the circle and like, who is this? Probably young Black, boy or teen with an Arabic name, and like, what's going on? But born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, but having some family members that are Muslim is what got me the Arabic name.
Crazy story, right? So I'm in this training on intersectionality and multiculturalism, right? and diversity. And I see this skit that talks about the same thing you're talking from. It's this white guy with this Asian woman, and he's like, "Oh, you look beautiful. Where are you from?" And she was like, "New York." He was like, "No, but where are you really from?" And she was like, "New York." And he was like, no, where like your parents and their parents and their parents and their parents from? And she was like, "Oh, Korean." He was like, "Oh, I knew it. I knew it. I knew you were Korean. I knew you were Korean, blah, 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 blah." Right. So I'm like, oh man. So then reverse it, right? She says the same exact thing to him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm from California." And she was like, "No, where are you really from?" He was like, "California. Where you're?" And he was like, "Oh, they're English, right?" And he was like, and then she started making all this, like she sounded like she was English, like, "Hello, governor, how are you doing today?" and all that kind of stuff. And then he like was like, "Oh, you're acting weird." And she was like, "Exactly." So it was very interesting how, how certain groups can say, like, "Where are you from?" because there's a sense of ownership that others feel like they have, or have or do not have, depending on which side of the fence you're on. So yeah, very interesting. So how did you grow up in the Midwest? Right, Midwest is very different. How did you grow up in the Midwest?
When you say how did I grow up, are you looking for a specific, to down on a specific area, or just in general?
So in general, how did you grow up in the Midwest? Like two-parent household, regular traditional family. I know non-traditional to some degree because of the religious practices potentially.
Hmm.
But what was
Yeah.
life like in the Midwest?
Um,
In Columbus, Ohio. I ain't never been to Columbus, Ohio.
I
What
got you.
was, I just know it's cold as hell there. That's it.
Yeah. I remember that. I remember that. Grew up to what I would say is a very hardworking family. The and it's a simple question, but it's bringing up a lot. The hardworking family. My when My mom and dad divorced when I was young, so I grew up with both of them, but both of them in separate places. So both parents, but not both parents in the same household. For when I was born, the my mom's got family and connections to Cleveland, Ohio, and Elyria, Ohio. So any Ohio folks will know those references. And then my dad's his side of family is from Columbus, but with roots that go back to Mississippi. So yeah, so grew up to good good people, hardworking people, genuine people. Yeah, like a solid family, like a very solid family. The When you asked that question, it was bringing up, I said it was bringing up, some stuff. The My paternal grandfather, so my dad's dad, which was my oldest, until recently, my oldest surviving grandparent, passed recently, transitioned recently. The and So when you said that, it brought up a lot. He was essentially, what I say, is the patriarch of our family. He was 105 years old, 105-year-old World War II vet that raised five children, along with my paternal grandmother, and worked decades. Worked all of his life. Was an entrepreneur. Had a business on the side, and um, it is not an overstatement to say one of my heroes. Like absolutely one of my heroes. So yeah, so when I say growing up to hardworking people, that's some of what was coming up when you asked the question. So yeah, but grew up to a good family with some. I'm biased, obviously, but some amazing people.
So now what we do on the Resilient Kings podcast is we do it every single episode. And I don't know how it comes up. Maybe this is just something that's just it's organic. We always immortalize those that have transitioned, right? And keep them with the ancestors, and making sure that we allow them to live forever, because my hope is that this podcast lives forever, at least on wax. Well, we can't say on wax no more because it ain't like that anymore. But those who know. But digitally, right? That they are digitally eternal, right? Not only to you, but to others as well, right? You have your relationship, but I want to make sure that anybody that has meant anything to us always lives forever through this podcast. So shout out your grandfather's first and last name so that he lives forever through this podcast.
His name was Herbert. His middle name, his middle initial was B,
Okay.
which actually wasn't a middle name; it was just the initial. And
Okay.
his last name was McGee. So Herbert B. McGee. Yeah,
All right.
born in 1919. In
1919.
Rose Hill, Mississippi. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So
Wow. Shout out to your grandfather. Many blessings. And I hope he is spending some amazing time with the ancestors at this point.
I need to take a breath on that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Anytime, brother. That is a requirement here on Resilient Kings podcast, is that we immortalize those who mean something to us.
Yeah. That he did and continues to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So your mother and father stay close together, or did did everybody migrate to to Columbus, or do you still have people in Mississippi right now that your family's connected to?
Although I'm not as close with the family members that that lineage that came from Mississippi, because he migrated, he's part of that great migration north.
Yes, of course.
So he migrated there. So I don't have as stronger ties to the lineage beyond him that's from Mississippi. Most of my ties are Ohio and South Carolina, and then also just here in Georgia.
Okay.
So,
okay. Yeah. Outstanding. So you grew up in Ohio, amazing working class family. What brought you to Georgia?
Opportunity. I was in Cincinnati, was done with undergrad, with my undergrad degree. I was in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm done with undergrad. I'm working. Actually, I had my first job that started and then a year later stopped. Like I got let go, essentially. They eliminated the position. So I'm like, all right, I'm done with undergrad. I just had, a job change. There weren't, to be candid, as many young professionals of color that I saw in and around Cincinnati. And I kind of wanted or needed that. Like I was kind of looking for my tribe, people that I felt were quote unquote like me. One of my sisters, who's still down here, one of my sisters was already in Atlanta. She had moved down here. She was doing her thing. She's a physician. And I came down to visit her, and I remember driving back from Atlanta to Cincinnati and thinking, why am I still living in Cincinnati? Because coming to Atlanta and then seeing, Black folks, African-American folks all over was new for me in terms of just an experience. And seeing, quote unquote, us represented in all areas of life, meaning you get off the off ramp and the brother that's saying, hey, do you have a couple dollars? Is Black. Look at the CEO or the VP or the SVP of the Fortune 500 or 100, and he or she may be Black. And I'm like, okay. And for me, it kind of did this, like in terms of like open up the blinders of it fed an internal sense of you can do whatever you want to do. So that, was kind of like, age, stage, opportunity. It was like, what, it may make sense to make a move down. And I talked to an older Black man who's kind of a mentor of mine. I don't know if he knows or not, but mentor of mine at the time. And I asked him, if you were me, would you do it or not? And he was very, from the outside looking in, very successful. Living in Cincinnati, had a very storied career, so he had quote unquote made it. And he was like, in so many words, he was like, if it was me, like almost like I wouldn't think twice, like I would go. And it kind of gave me, I guess, some of the license or permission I felt like I needed to be like, all right, I'm gonna do this. So yeah, it was opportunity.
So you didn't said look, these are two resilient king skills. that y'all just heard this man talk about that y'all didn't even he just sped on by him. So I got to go ahead and highlight him because these are two Resilient Kings. These are two Resilient King skills that he just addressed that y'all need to write down. Right, take a picture of, go back and listen to it again, or whatever you need to do. One is this man said that he wanted to find his tribe. He wanted to find his connection, people that thought like him and wanted to grow like him. So let's go back to that piece, right? Explain that.
The and I don't think I'm alone in this. To my mind, all of us want or maybe even need, it may not be all the time, but there are times in life where we want or even need to have, what as I call it, our tribe, meaning people that for whatever reasons we identify as like us, like me, whatever that is. That could be race, that could be gender, that could be, the way they think, it could be education, it could be the way they see the world, it could be whatever, but it's like, oh, that person is like me. And if there's enough groups of people that we see as like us, then it's like, oh, this is my tribe. um
So hold on a minute. Let's clarify
yeah.
something because a lot of these dudes out here that's trying to figure out how to be kings, they
Mhm.
believe that that's people that follow them is their tribe.
Gotcha.
You see what I'm saying? Like
Gotcha.
they have a whole bunch of people around them and they follow them and they believe, oh, that's the tribe.
mm, I gotcha.
So I'm trying to help them see that, hold on a minute, that ain't your tribe,
Hmm.
right? You notice that he said those that think like him have commonality in some way, shape, or form, not that just want to follow him. So again, that's a Resilient King skill. Y'all got to pay attention to this. I'm telling you, this man gonna be dropping jewels today. So y'all got to understand what this is. It's not about them following you. It's about commonality, like-mindedness in some way, shape, or form. Right. So
Mhm.
that's one. The second thing you said is that you had a older gentleman, even though
Mhm.
your father was present. Father was present,
Mhm.
right? So for those of you fathers are present and aren't present, this is for y'all. Are or aren't, another Resilient King skill. You said that there was a gentleman that mentored you, right? So, and I'm
Mhm.
saying that because most people are, oh, I got a dad, I don't need anybody else, right? Or
Mm.
I don't have a dad, and I still don't need anybody else,
Mhm.
right? You had a father that was influential in your life,
Yes.
and you still had somebody kind of guiding you that you went to outside of him. Talk about that piece.
Yeah. In
And
hindsight, in
if you want to shout
retrospect.
him out, you shout him out too.
Yeah, the in hindsight and in retrospect, it was a blessing. The one of the without going into all the details, one of the first jobs I had outside of college, out of undergrad, was a consulting firm. Consulting firm had three different divisions, and in the three different divisions, the head, the I think all of them were VPs. The VPs of each division were Black men. Not only were the three heads of divisions Black men, the setup of the consulting firm was small enough such that we were in the same physical office. Sometimes, if they weren't, at a client engagement or out of town or whatnot. I say that to say it was, even though I was there for a short period of time, it was extremely beneficial. The word beneficial doesn't capture it all, but good, good, helpful. I appreciate it more than words can say, to be able to see a living example of three different Black men, people that were moving through the world, as both male and thin, African American or Black men, and see them in professional environments and seeing how they interacted in the office. If I was able to maybe, tag along on a client or site visit, see how they were interacting with clients, seeing just how they navigate, how they moved essentially.
Okay.
It was
How they
like
navigated
giving
the
me.
world from their position.
Yes, and the is a big, observational learner, meaning just I'm paying attention. I'm trying to clock what's going on around me. It was helpful to kind of give models of like, oh, this is how you can handle this situation with, grace or handle it with integrity, or like, just ways of moving in professional environments. So the gentleman I spoke of was one actually out of actually three that were. That's why I say I don't know if they know it or not, but they were in some ways formal, but also informal mentors and models of like, oh, this is how you can move. So yeah, yes. Super grateful for that. And one of them, I don't know if I was been able to say it to all three, but one of them I was able to. We ended up connecting. Goodness, decades later, a few years back, and like later on a phone call, I was able to say like, thank you, like whether you, I don't know if you know it or not, but who you were, who you be was helpful and instrumental to me, just having you be you, like, just seeing how you moved, and being able to actually, tell him, on the phone during a brief connect
Giving
was
him
something
his flowers.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so that's the piece about models.
So now, were your parents professionals?
No, not, I mean, the not in the corporate America
Sense.
No, not in
Okay.
the corporate America sense. Nope.
So listening to that piece too, right? So there is a piece that you can get from your parents that may be hardworking, that may be diligent, that may be, but they don't have to be where you are for you to want to do something in a different field, right? You don't have to follow their path. They're just setting up a path for you to take, and the path is yours to take, right? And you found people that are outside of what your parents did that were going in a direction that you wanted to go in, and you found other people to pour into you in order for you to move in a direction you wanted to move in. Man, I'm trying to tell you, I told y'all. So I want to drop this last question on you. This is going to be a heavy one. I want to drop this last question on me before we end our episode. What is something that you learned growing up that you had to unlearn as an adult?
You're right. That's a good one, because I'm having a pause on that one.
That
Like I know when I have to pause, I'm like, oh, that's good. What is something that I learned growing up?
you learned growing up as a young man
Mm-hmm.
that now that you're married, successful, have your own home, you know, um, what did you have to unlearn to be? What did you have to unlearn to be the man you are today that you learned growing up? I'm even deepen it.
The thing that immediately comes to mind is the belief and I have to say it wasn't something that was taught by my parents. It's something I picked up, just lived right inside. It wasn't like a family member sat down and said, "This is the way to think," or but I picked it up, and I think that was growing up the belief that I had to be perfect and I had to do it alone. Like, you have to be perfect in how you perform, so to speak, and you have to do it alone. That's not true. And I would say I'm in the process of unlearning that. I wouldn't say I've unlearned it, it's completely gone. I would say there's significantly less of it, but I would say I'm actively in the process of continuing to to see through that. I'll say that, and to unlearn it. So yeah, it's that I would say perfectionism, and thinking that it's just got to all be on you, without knowing that um, it doesn't have to be. And sometimes it's great when it isn't. Like, you bring your superpower, your value add to other people, and their superpower, their value add another person, and the next thing you know, you all are operating in your gifts and getting getting things done, getting results.
So I'm gonna ask a follow-up question to that.
Mhm.
How do you stop yourself when you're in the process of your unlearning? How do you stop yourself from working in isolation? Because I know it may be easier to do so because that perfectionism may come up, that I got to do it by myself comes up. How do you check that?
The two things that immediately come up, the first is catching it, like catching that tape playing. One is just the self awareness of catching that tape, or that belief playing. So that's one. And then the second is, this gonna sound weird, but failure, meaning not getting the result I want. Like I'm doing it my way and it's not getting the result I want, i.e., failure. So failing and being like, okay, you're not getting like you're doing it this way, you're not getting the result you want. Maybe this is, a tap on the shoulder to say, hey, look at a different way. So it's really those two, self-awareness of catching it if that belief is showing up, and then looking at an outcome and saying, is it aligned or not? And if it isn't, then sometimes it's like, all right, well, it's not working. So look at a different alternative. So those are the two.
Okay. Fantastic. So, all right. So any advice, I know we're at the end, any additional advice outside of what you've given that you want to share before we end this episode?
Ooh, I feel like I want to get into my motivational speaker, bag.
You look, you got it. You got the floor. Because we're gonna definitely have you back. So you got the floor. So what do you want to say? If it's nothing, then we'll at the next episode you can say it. But anything you want to impart people with before we end, anything you want to give these resilient kings.
I'll share what's coming up like immediately in the moment, and that is simply that you are important. You specifically, to whoever the you is hearing this, and that goes, it fully includes and goes beyond, the intended target of this podcast. Whoever that you is, you are important. You matter, and you have gifts that only you can give that the world is waiting for. Wow. So that's kind of what's coming up to share. Yeah.
I ain't got nothing to say, y'all. I'm gonna leave it right there. Resilient Kings Podcast. I'm your host, Yaron Brown. All right, y'all. We'll see you later, and I'm out.